Thank you to our listeners and our viewers for joining us today on the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast. I'm thrilled to have Isabelle Tremblay with us here today. She's a best-selling author and heart-led leadership expert who helps women redefine success after burnout because she experienced her own burnout and recovery from that. And after a 24-year corporate career, she made the courageous decision to walk away and create a new way of leading, one rooted in love, purpose, and alignment. So through her work and her book, Love, Lead, Succeed, I love that title, she shares practical tools to quiet the mind, reconnect with yourself, and build a life and business that feels good from the inside out. Isabelle, thank you for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate you having me and excited to share my message with your audience.
As this podcast has developed over the last 5 seasons now, over 200 episodes, I think that this is really one of our core messages too, in that build what you need as a mom entrepreneur, but it has to be aligned. And if you're going to build something that's just going to burn you out in the long run, what good is that? You have to have something that is going to nourish you and your life. So I can't wait to dive in. But before we get to all of the questions, take us back to that moment when you realized you needed to make a change.
Yes, so I spent over 2 decades, as we mentioned, climbing to the pinnacle of my career. At the end of my career in the corporate world, because now I've decided to be an entrepreneur, I completely burnt out. And it was, of course, a very difficult moment of my life because, like many high achieving moms and women, I wanted to achieve a lot of things and I was measuring my life with, titles and the number of emails or meetings I would participate in, as opposed to how aligned I am with my purpose. And I have to tell you, my burnout was the most powerful leadership lesson I've learned. It wasn't a breakdown, it was truly an awakening. I found myself and I came home to myself following this health challenge.
That is a really interesting thing that you just said, that your breakdown really felt like an awakening. How can you describe that? Because I think that's really powerful, because in those moments, and I've been there where I've been totally burned out, what was that shift where you went, oh, I think I can learn something from this?
Yes, because unfortunately, through the burnout process, I got to a point where I was so exhausted. And often with burnout too comes depression.
Mm.
So there was a moment, after I was diagnosed, like I could barely get out of bed, like just even like brushing my teeth could feel like a lot of work because I got to a point in my life and in my career where the mental noise and the pressure on me was so high. Like I was not only working over 80 hours a week, managing two different business divisions, two different budgets in different countries, and over 20 people reporting to me. I was also going through a very challenging divorce. I was a single mom and, the only parent providing and caring for my two beautiful daughters. So the pressure on me was relentless. And when I finally started healing myself and taking steps to really focus on me and choose myself first, love myself. And I can tell you this is not selfish. This is the number one leadership rule. You need to choose yourself first and love yourself. I was able to quiet down the mental noise and it just brought me to a space where I was able to really answer some of the big life questions. So not that question, who do you want to be when you grow up, but more, what's your vision in life? What's your mission? And through this breakdown, I found my purpose. And now I'm on a mission to help over 1 million people through my Love Lead Succeed platform to positively impact their life and really help high achieving women reclaim their time, power, and energy because so many of them feel exhausted.
Hmm. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that we feel exhausted and we think it's just normal, right? And so, looking back on that time where you were experiencing burnout before you were diagnosed, what are those things that you think that you overlooked that your mind and your body and your spirit were saying, look, you're doing too much?
Yeah, I think high achieving women will, as you mentioned, they'll normalize exhaustion. We
Mm-hmm.
actually wear it like a badge of honor sometimes. But the earliest sign are not always physical, they're more emotional. So I was experiencing decision fatigue. For instance, I
Mm-hmm.
can't say coming home after work because a lot of time I was working from home, but traveling a lot too. Just a simple decision of, after work, whatever time that is, and sometimes it was very late at night, the decision of what to make for dinner, couldn't figure it out because that became not high on the priority list, but my brain was just so foggy. And I also remember at some point I was doing this when my girls were just babies, but I've always traveled a lot for work. And when they were babies, I would always cry on the way to the airport because I felt like such a terrible mom. Again, self-judgment is never a good thing, but a lot of us women do that. Well, when I came to that point of, breaking down and I knew I was starting not to be okay, I started doing this again, like crying on the way to the airport the entire way, like in the Uber, in the back of the Uber, just crying. So that was also a sign that I started not feeling well. But when I really realized that I couldn't do it anymore, is I was sitting at my computer and I was trying to just write a simple email, very simple, a couple of lines, and I just sat there for 2 hours and I couldn't figure out the sentences. And that was probably back when we didn't have much or we weren't using AI much, because now maybe it would have been easier. But I couldn't even figure out what I wanted to write in that email. So I'm like, oh, I'm completely losing it. So I went to see
Mm-hmm.
my family doctor and he diagnosed me with a situational stress disorder, which is, well, burnout. Well, I called it failure because I felt so guilty that he put me on sick leave and I wasn't, allowed to go back to work. I felt guilty because I was leaving my team at work without me, supporting them and protecting them too from a culture that was getting very toxic. So I felt guilty for my team not being there for them. I felt also like a failure because high achieving women, they want to work and do more and do more. And if you're spending your day at home just taking care of yourself, it should be the best thing to do and a priority, but it felt really like a failure at that time.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's so important to share because, like you said, we normalize as high achievers feeling exhausted. Like, the more exhausted you are, the more you're doing, the better you are. It's like you said, a badge of honor. And we normalize, like, oh, maybe it's my age, or maybe it's something we ate, or something like that. We try to legitimize in our mind why we're feeling the way we are. And so, while everybody's burnout looks differently, I'm sure, I think it's so powerful for you to say that even something like trying to figure out what you would make for dinner is really powerful. And thinking about times when I was really stressed and doing too much, I would do the same thing, but that never occurred to me that that was a sign of burnout. So thanks for sharing that. I love that because I think it's important to know that other people are going through this too. When you're trying to just tread water, you think you're the only person going through it. But now that I've taken a lot off of my plate, dinner is easy. Now that I think
Yes.
about it, things in life are just so much easier when you start to take that pressure off. So, talk about how this burnout then helped you change your leadership style, because I think that's so interesting how we can use what you described felt like a failure to actually fuel our success.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, for those 23 years, I was in the corporate world. I was defining my success by title and by how many emails I've sent or how many meetings I participated in. I think my leadership style was always love centered. So I've always believed in high emotional intelligence, in building trust and respect, and really serving other, because leaders should really serve their team to rise up. And I've always told my team, my goal is to make you, get my position one day, because you want to build your team to be able to expand and just rise. So, what had changed in terms of my leadership style would be more in terms of, like, I completely discovered that love led leadership not only does it include all these key elements like emotional intelligence and serving your team, but you need to learn to love yourself first. We have to understand we can't pour from an empty cup. So what I ignored during those 23 years of corporate leadership was to take care of myself first. And I needed to completely break down to realize that. And since then, I completely reinvented the way I approach my life and the way I live my life as well.
What does success look like when it's centered on love and purpose? Because I think a lot of people, like you said, have may already have that. As female leaders, we already are tend to be more emotionally intelligent and support our teams in a way that's different. And you did say that you do take care of yourself more. You put yourself first, but it also sounds like boundaries are part of that, because you're giving to your team and the company that you're working for, but not doing a lot for yourself.
Yes, definitely. And boundaries are so important. So I would say that what success looks like today, it's like sustainable rhythms.
Mm.
And that's actually the fourth part of my coaching program for C-suite women. But the first thing I do in the morning is I wake up and protect my energy first. And that's something I would highly recommend to all executive or women out there. I personally do it through meditation, and this is something I started through my burnout recovery. So before I give my attention to anyone else, I spend, it used at the beginning, it was 5 minutes. Now it's more closer to 40 minutes. I spend time just protecting my energy, calming down all that mental noise that's not helpful for most people. And I also use it to plan my future through my thoughts and what I really focus on. And it also means that, you mentioned I've reinvented myself at the age of 47 and launched a company. My company is based on, I consult, I coach executive women, and I also do speaking engagements sharing that message. So my daily life and my success is to really serve others and help them through my message, my story, you know, build those boundaries. And really, it's the beautiful reality of leadership and enjoying an aligned life when you can really truly say no to things, maybe to good opportunity, to be able to say yes to greater ones.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds too like your new version of success doesn't include that exhaustion that you're experiencing because you were just constantly giving. And the discernment to, like you said, say yes to those things that truly align with you and won't leave you depleted.
Exactly. You need to really, as mentioned, the boundaries are so important. They're actually walls. I call them walls to protect your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And, managing and protecting your energy is so important.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep it to yourself first and focus on what gives you energy to be able to give it to others later, right? But make sure you're truly aligned with your vision and your goals before you do that.
I love that you mentioned energy too. As a Reiki practitioner, it was a light bulb experience for me to understand we have an energetic body and we also have our physical body, and there's a physical aspect, a practical aspect, and an energetic aspect to everything we do. So I'm really curious to hear, how do your clients and those in the C-suite, how do they react when you say you need to protect your energy? How do they take that message?
I think most people understand the concept, but
Mm,
we bring it back to just a simple thing. For instance, it's like your calendar.
mm,
If you want to learn how to manage your calendar better, well, you need to do an energy audit. So I recommend to executive women at the end of the day, maybe take like just, it's not even 5 minutes, just a few minutes to maybe write down three things that brought you energy today and three things that did not. So for instance, I took my dog for a beautiful walk by the lake this morning. This is definitely going to be my on my list tonight. So I would say
mm,
once you've done that audit of three things that did bring you energy versus three things that did not, well, I would recommend tomorrow do more of the things that brought you energy.
mm,
Because it's so important, because once you're depleted of that energy, it's when sometimes a crash happen, and don't wait for that crash to happen.
mm-hmm. Yeah, energy is not some woo woo thing. You can make it
No.
really practical. It is like something that really exists, and it's so easy, like you said, when you do an audit of what you do and you realize how you feel when you're doing certain things, that can be a direct message to what is zapping your energy and what is it that you really love to do. I think it's a great tip and something that's really important to be mindful of in leadership. We often talk about on the podcast how moms and women are actually pre qualified to be leaders. And I think it goes to that emotional intelligence. But what is it specifically about that heart led leadership that particularly makes a leader effective?
Well, leading with love, and I repeat that often, it's not soft, because for some leaders in the corporate world, it sounds leadership with love. Well, I don't know, that
Right.
doesn't have love shouldn't be involved with business, right? But leading with love is really about cultivating that amazing culture
Mm,
through compassion, respect, building trust, genuine care for your team, for serving them, pushing them forward. And that's what
mm,
what my book Lovely Succeed is about. Is it's not love as a feeling, but as an action on how you're supporting your team and empowering them and enabling them to rise as well. So I have to tell you though that I've experienced both sides of this. I've touched on this maybe a little bit earlier. The opposite of not leading with love is leading from a place of fear or ego. And when you do that, you put tremendous pressure on your team. You're not allowing them to rise and fully expand. And I've lived the other side of, the I would say not bad leadership, but not love-led leadership, where I
mm-hmm,
had at the end of my career, I also had a manager that, would like be a bully. And, I would make a presentation to her and then I would be told that was vomit on slides and things like that. So I would say love-led leadership is anything outside of ego. And it's like, and trust me, on the other side of fear, you can embrace a life and a leadership style that's truly helps you be fully aligned, but also help your team expand and become their best self.
I completely agree. And I think that this really applies also to how we are as parents. I mean, and usually how we are in one thing, we are on all things. And this is something I think a lot of, I see my daughter talks to me about her friends and their family, and they, as parents, we're leaders, and it's the same thing for our children. They just want to be seen, they just want to be cared for, and that doesn't make you less of a parent or less of a leader by understanding and empathizing, but still leading. And so it's a really important distinction that so many of us are kind of made to think that the only type of effective leadership is that ego leadership. And the fact that there's a different way that not only is better, but it makes you more effective is so powerful.
Absolutely. And I love that mention you said about being a mom is also leadership, and it's
Yeah.
so true. And this is where I think you could be the most successful with love-led leadership, but also remembering that, you might have to set boundaries with kids too. And it's okay to say, mom needs a reset, so I need 15 minutes. And it's okay to take that time if you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in doing that and setting those boundaries, we're teaching our children how to do the same. And
Yes.
so it has this ripple effect, just like ego led leadership has ripple effect. You know, that leader is probably burnt out and stressed and fearful. And that trickles down to the team, who is then also burnt out and stressed and fearful. And so if we flip the script, we can actually be happier and more successful, and it's more, we're healthy, it's sustainable. So I love that we're beginning to talk about this because it hasn't been part of the leadership conversation. Even I, starting this podcast, I worked 20 years in a male dominated legal industry that you were only as good as your last mistake. You were only, you know,
Uh,
and somebody who wasn't aggressive couldn't be successful. And there really is an alternative to that, that, like I said, is actually more successful. I really love that I can facilitate that conversation. I love that you already shared this idea of taking time before you do anything else throughout the day to protect your energy. But what are a few other simple practices that our listeners can use to quiet their mind, as you have to learn how to do, and reconnect with themselves?
Yes, so I mentioned meditation, of course, and I also mentioned I guess, the energy audit that you can do
Yep.
at the end of the day. I think it's a good practice to do. But I have two more that I really focus on in my book. One is the power of gratitude. So I mentioned the walk with my dog earlier. When I go for a walk with my dog in the morning, I go through the 50 things in my life that I'm the most grateful for. And sometimes from day to day it changes. But that allows me to feel happy because I feel like my cup is full, and I'm so grateful for everything that I have instead of, complaining or being ungrateful about things that I don't have. And gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. So that's a very powerful way to manage the noise in your head because you're only thinking about positive things. And the other thing I recommend is the power of positive affirmations. I know sometimes I play them at night, and there's many apps that are available on that, but you can even record yours. But if you don't want that noise at night, that's okay too. You could just spend, I don't know, if you're working out or again, going on a walk or you're cooking dinner, you could play positive affirmation, like the universe is constantly working in my favor. I'm a money magnet. Like there's so many of them depending on what you truly want in life and in your career. Positive affirmations can be very powerful.
Yeah, they can. And I don't think people really understand that they have this default story they're telling themselves that runs all day long in their subconscious. And that doesn't change until we intentionally disrupt it with something like the positive affirmations or the gratitude. And gratitude is the highest frequency, it's the
Yes.
highest form of being when you're not in a state of lack or depression being like something that is very low energy. When you feel like you said your cup is full and you're just grateful to just be in that moment with your dog or whatever is going on in your life, is just, I don't know if there's any better state to be.
No, I mean, gratitude is, I talk a lot about this in my book, Love Lead Succeed. It's just, I mentioned it's the most powerful way for the universe to give you more. It gives a sign to the
Yeah.
universe that, you're grateful for this, so they'll send more.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage people to, if it's for anything, it's a good way of feeling happy. Because I try to say thank you and not like sometimes when I walk, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you, and it just brings a smile to my face.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend it.
Right. And while you were talking and adding those tips, we often think that we have to go through a major transformation. We have to purchase some expensive, I don't know, coaching program, or, sometimes we need that for the accountability to keep us on track. But all of the things you mentioned, if somebody wanted to make a shift today, they're free.
Yeah.
It's just really about the decision and the intention behind it.
Exactly. And there's so many great resources out there, like whether it's books or, your podcast, and there's a lot of content. That's a great thing about this world right now. We have access to so much content. Sometimes it can be a negative because it's
Yes.
information overload. But if you're really looking for something to help you, there's a lot you can find online and networks and such.
Well, before we wrap up, do you have any shifts that you think busy moms can make maybe today or this week that they're listening to this podcast that really can make a difference in their life to help with the overwhelm and the burnout?
I would say start with something small, As you mentioned, often, we think we have to, and you don't have to like completely reinvent yourself or quit your job. Sometimes it's just with something smart. So start with your morning, protect your energy. So start with 15 minutes for yourself. If meditation's not for you, that's okay. Just spend some time journaling and do that energy audit I mentioned at the end of the day. And throughout the day, if at some point you don't feel okay, well, that's okay. Just take some time. One other thing I would do when, I would be in a stressful situation, like if you're feeling stressed out, just get into the present moment. Like if it can help, if you're drinking a glass of water, coffee, focus on your mug or your glass and just try to just take a few minutes to empty your brain from all that noise and just take a few minutes, or I mean breathing exercises would help too, but learn to love, yourself first and don't ignore the signs of exhaustion because
Mm,
you don't want to wait until you completely crash to realize that you need to protect your energy.
yeah, I love that. So before we go, if there is a busy mompreneur listening and she feels that slowing down or being more mindful and intentional, as you mentioned, is going to actually hurt their growth, not help it, what would you say?
um like I would say I know how you feel because I live that, but slowing down is actually the only way to really allow you to focus on your vision. It's not like in chaos and doing more that you're going to have clarity, right? So you need to really take that time for yourself, and when you're truly aligned with your purpose and your priorities and protecting your energy, this is when you can truly accelerate your growth and become your best self. Because I believe in you. You are an unlimited human being and you can achieve anything you want if you just focus the right energy on it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's, I 100% agree. And it is though, I equate it to trying to catch salmon with a goldfish net. And it's, if you have those expansive dreams and those expansive ideas, you have to also expand the way that you get there and the way you think about them. And so I think that's 100% true. So thank you, Isabelle. Can you tell listeners where they can connect with you? I can't wait to read your book. It sounds like something I'm just going to be nodding my whole way through.
Yes, absolutely. Listeners can reach me on Instagram at Love Leads Succeed. I also have a LinkedIn page. I have a YouTube channel at Love Leads Succeed as well, where I share, practical tips every day. There's a new video being posted. So I'd love to connect. Feel free to visit my website, succeed.ca, and you can send me an email. I love to exchanging ideas with leaders in general, but women in particular, and how I can help them reclaim their time and energy as well.
Yeah. So important, so necessary right now when I think we're all reassessing, I think. What is it that I really want? Because this can't just be it, right?
Yes, I know.
Yeah, it's been happening since the pandemic. So I love that we're having that conversation now after that difficult time. But I think it really helped us all to start making some changes in our lives. So thanks so much for your work and your time today for this conversation.
Thank you, Angela, for providing that platform for your listeners.
Thanks.